Hey guys, we are back in the office today with another editing breakdown. In today's edit, we are going to be doing a lot of advanced blending techniques to piece together this nighttime image from the desert. If you guys are new to the channel, my name is Riley Clark. Welcome. I am an outdoor nature photographer based out of Las Vegas, Nevada, and I do a lot of content based around my time as a nature photographer, whether that being doing product reviews of outdoor adventure equipment or van builds, or taking you guys along my journeys as an outdoor photographer. This channel has all of that. So if you guys enjoy that, then please consider hitting that subscribe button down below because I have a lot more content coming down the pipeline. That is enough of that though. Let's go ahead and jump in and get to editing. What I have here is an image I captured actually a couple years ago now, out of an area that I actually took you guys to in one of my last in the field videos. What I want to do is actually go through and rework on this image because there's some things I definitely think I could be doing better in it now that I have some knowledge. And what I did is I took a few images with some light painting going on. If I toggle between the two images, you will see I light painted this back area and I light painted this other foreground element, and then I also had an image where I used a light to illuminate the backside of this. So I want to go ahead and blend these three together, and then also I have a shot of the galactic core, which is actually I really underexposed it, so we will see if we can rescue that. If not, I have another Milky Way that's very similar that we could piece together. So I am going to pause for a second though and say, if you are a purist, meaning that you do not look at photo editing as a positive thing, then you probably should stop watching, because we're going to be doing some big photo manipulation and piecing together. So there is your disclaimer. So the first things that I want to do is grab this first image, and I want to go ahead and fix my exposure a touch on this. So I'm going to go ahead and drop the exposure down to about right there. I'm watching my histogram. I want to keep that data right in the middle, and that's what I'm watching right now. Everything else is black, is definitely pushing that histogram to the left because of everything's falling into darkness back here. But I'm more looking at this front area, which we are golden. I'm going to lift my shadows a touch and my blacks, and drop the highlights, and maybe actually bring the exposure back up and increase my whites. And let's drop that down just a touch more. What I want to make sure is I have a good solid line to work with up here, so when I go to do my blending later on, I'm not dealing with any issues there. I might lift the shadows a little bit more here. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and drop some clarity down and boost some vibrance in, and then I actually am going to come down here to my calibration tab and boost some blue saturation in there. The next thing I want to make sure I do is come here and turn off the sharpening. This was shot at night, which means that there might be some noise present, and I do not want to have to deal with any of that. So, and it actually is a pretty clean file, but we will probably actually use some noise reduction from Lightroom here. Their new AI noise reduction. I don't think I'm going to need that much. I think about 20 should be fine, just to clean up the file a little bit more. So now if you look down here, I have an enhanced NRDNG. That is the new file. So I'm going to come over here to this one, and I'm going to click 0 since I have everything set as a 5-star, and the only thing showing is 5 stars. So I don't have to deal with those anymore. Now let's go ahead and copy these settings. And then I'm going to come over to this image, and I'll get rid of my film strip down here and click paste. Cool. Now I'm going to adjust this a little bit more and play with those. I'm going to increase the brightness up just a touch on there. Again, just making sure I can see where I'm going to need to cut out to paste in my new sky. And I don't have to worry too much about the right side of this because I'm getting that definitive line from this piece And then this side is definitely making it darker, but we're just using that for the underside of this fin mostly. You can see it's kind of falling underneath here, so it's gonna just give us a nice balanced light there. Now the next is to mess with this image. I'm gonna go ahead and drop the exposure, bring up my shadows, I'm gonna drop my highlights, and I'm actually gonna cool this off. It's a little too warm. Bring down my clarity. You can see where I actually overexposed it a touch here. So let's actually reset this, and let's come up here, and I'm going to use a linear profile on this just to see if I can recover maybe a little bit more data. No, I can't. So I blew that out a little bit. Oh well. I'm gonna drop the vibrance a touch, highlights a touch, raise my shadows so I can get this cool undertone here, which I think looks awesome. Drop the clarity and make sure my sharpness is done and everything else is looking pretty good. I do actually now, so then what I want to do is make sure that I denoise this image. So there's going to be some noise in there. And then I'm going to make sure this one's denoised. Awesome. Now what we want to do is actually take this image and this image, and we're going to open these as layers in Photoshop together, and we're going to start our blend with these. This is how I have my layers now selected, and what I want to do is go ahead and brush in this layer. And how there's a few different ways of doing that, but how I'm just going to do it is put a layer mask on it, and I'm going to grab a brush and zoom in. I'm going to make sure it's at 100% opacity, and I'm just going to come in on these dark areas here, kind of a smaller brush, and just start brushing in with black and seeing how this goes. Yep, looking pretty good. Making sure that I'm staying close to that edge. And then if I hold the space bar, I can get my hand. Cool. Now let's go ahead and brush the rest of that in. I can always come back and do some cleanup. That's the nice thing about using the brush right now. Brushing in this foreground area. Yep, there's some here, so I'm gonna zoom in, make sure I get this area. And yeah, it looks pretty good. My edge looks a little off though. So what I'm gonna do is come in here. I'm gonna hit X to toggle my black back. And let's just come in here and clean up this edge with a smaller one. Don't want a fuzzy edge. I also don't want any black like that, because then that will look awkward. Yeah, we want to go ahead and brush that out. Don't want that line there. Some up in this upper corner I can see. Smaller brush. And we'll clean this line up. So that's without, and that's what's coming in. Okay. Looks nice so far. Now what I need to do is grab this image from Lightroom, edit in Adobe Photoshop, and that will bring it into Photoshop. Now what I can do is hold Shift, click, drag this over, throw this right on top. Cool. And then I want to go ahead and throw a black mask on this. And we will just start painting with white. I want to get rid of this here. I want to keep my original blend that I had. Cool. But I do think I want to come up in here and put some of this under glow that we're getting on. Yeah, cool. Gives it kind of some life. And I think there was maybe some right in here, some light. Yeah, that looks pretty darn good, if I must say so myself. So that is the before and after there. It just kind of gave it some more dimension. Definitely could have left without it, but I kind of like it. I think I might make sure that everything back in here is really brushed in good. And then the last thing I might do is double check my edge here and just make sure that this edge is as clean. Yep, I got a little bit of ghosting going on right here, so we will just go ahead and clean that up. Some ghosting going on right in here. And a little bit of ghosting going on right here. I'm just double checking, making sure that my edge is as clean as I can get it. This is the time to do it, because if we start getting too far down the edit and we notice an edge, we're gonna be mad. This is looking a little weird right here. Is this? Yeah, okay. That's why. We're gonna brush that away. It's a very tedious process doing blends like this, but I do like how they turn out. And just so you know, I'm working with about a 6 to a 9 roughly size with the 0% hardness. So it still is kind of feathering it, but it helps me get really detailed with my brushing so I don't have ghosting happening just like that. So that's before and after. Before and after. So that would be just the front. That's both of those. Adds a lot more life to it, in my opinion. Now this is where the fun begins. I'm going to save these in their own folder and call this the blend folder, just in case if I ever need to come back, I can do so, which I might as well go through and just do another double check, making sure that my edge is good. Everything's looking good. Now, what I need to do is, if I press Control-Alt-Shift-E, or Command-Option-Shift-E for Mac users. Now, what I like to do with this actually is to use the eraser tool. Kill me in the comments about using layer masks. I find that I can do this a lot better, and also it just works for my workflow. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the bottom layers, and I'm just going to start with a really small brush and just start going across this edge. And the big thing I want to make sure is that if there's any like chromatic aberrations happening, I want to go ahead and make sure that is pulled out. Because we're going to be putting our sky in. And I'm going to stop just for a second because I know there's a bunch of different ways of doing this in terms of putting your sky in after when you've done a blend like this. There's also things you need to do in the field to make sure that you can do that. And when I first shot this image, I was really new to Astro, so didn't quite fully understand what needed to be done. So I did not do it. So I'm making it a pain in my butt. Like almost 2 years later, is from when I captured this. Never liked the process I've done on this. I've had this image, I've even posted this image before, but I never fully liked it. So I actually pulled it from the website, and I'm just following the contours. My brush down a little bit more, just making sure I get rid of that dark edge. And you can see I'm zoomed in at like 300%, which is way more than you should never need. Like nobody's ever going to be pixel peeping this much. All my images really are produced with print in mind, so fine art prints. So I want to make sure that I have good quality. And yeah, I zoom in, even though that I know this won't be reproduced. This is just the attention to detail that I like to do. Now, just for speed of video's sake, what I will show you guys now before I start, well, let's get through this tough area here, and then I will show you that. So I'm gonna go ahead and jump up over here because there's a really dark line right through there. I'm gonna shrink this up just a touch. I'm kind of guessing. now what I can do is if I grab the lasso, and I'm going to need to zoom in on this too, I'm going to lasso down, hold the hand, or hold spacebar to pull up my hand and drag. So I've actually learned this technique from two different individuals. One is named Mark Metternich. If you guys have not followed him or have gone and looked at his work and maybe even purchased some of his tutorials, highly recommend him. I've learned a lot of my post-processing from him. The other gentleman who is probably one of my photography idols is Marlon Holden. Now that I've selected those, I'm just going to hit delete. Now I got that area deleted and I got a nice clean edge in the works. So I'm going to come back through here now and go ahead and clean up any of these areas that I see and just make sure I'm getting a really clean file. Really, really clean file, because we want to be able to produce a very big print. Yeah. So now what I'll do is go ahead and continue to do this, and I'm going to go ahead though and shut up and do a time lapse of this because it's going to be quicker for me than just continuing to talk to you guys. Hopefully you get the gist, but I will do a time lapse. If you guys want to skip it, you can go ahead and click the timestamp down below and skip through it. But here we go. So essentially, this is now what we have. Now, I did go ahead and cut out down in this section. Instead of keeping that dark area that you guys saw me cut, I decided to actually remove it because I felt like I didn't have enough data there to really go off of. And yeah, I didn't really feel like it was going to work. And there's a couple areas here I see I need to clean up still. So I'm going to grab my eraser tool and I will go ahead and do that. So I'm just going to clean up some of these spots, do some edge patrol, make sure that I'm happy. I'm also going to probably remove that little nub because I feel like that's going to be distracting. Spec up here. Just doing some final edge patrol before we start doing our edit. Just seeing if there's any big places that I missed. Man, it looks pretty darn good. The original sky, I am not going to be able to save. So I went ahead and I dropped in this sky, which is a different one that we looked at earlier. It's essentially in the same orientation as before, just a little bit of a cleaner file. So, but they don't blend perfectly. So we're going to want to go ahead and adjust this sky. And one of the ways you can do that is if you come down and you add a color balance. And then if I hold Alt and I click on that, it's only going to affect that layer. It's a clipping mask and it's pretty blue purple. So I'm going to go ahead and put in some points of yellow. I don't mind a little bit of blue because it's the sky. It's a little bit different, but I don't want it to look too terribly off. So -8 is looking pretty good. So that's before and after of that. And then the next thing I want to do is come in with a vibrance adjustment. I'm going to drag it in there. Same thing, put a clipping mask on it, and I'm going to drop the vibrance down. But I don't want it to really touch the sky or the galaxy, the galactic core. So I'm going to grab a brush with a black mask and just come in here and brush in that galactic core just to make it pop a little bit more. And we'll do some other edits to make that pop. Before and after, just very subtle before and after, and then the two before and after with the sky. Now for the foreground, I want to go ahead and drop the brightness of this. And again, if I put a clipping mask on that and then drop the brightness down a touch, increase some contrast, that looks a little bit more blended now, which is good. Now on to some actual editing. So I'm going to do a Control Alt Shift and E and do a merge visible. And we're going to do a clean up of the sky. I zoom in here and grab a healing brush. I'm going to go ahead and just brush this out. If you also notice too, I cropped this to a 16:9. I felt like there was a lot of unused space over here, and a 16:9 ratio fit better. And it's also one of the print ratios that I work with. So I went ahead and cropped that earlier so I don't have to worry about that. I would show you guys that, but my computer crashed and didn't save the recording. So I'm actually re-recording this. I already finished this edit, but we're re-recording it. So what I want to do is do some dodging. So I'm going to come in here and put an blank overlay layer. And I use Lumenzia for luminosity masks. So you guys can, there's a few different ways. I'm going to use luminosity mask in this. So I'm just going to grab a lights. I do have an update available that I haven't used yet, but I'm going to grab a lights 1.5. If I hit Control H, I can hide my marching ants. I'm going to grab a brush at like 20% opacity. And I usually like to brush in a little bit of warmth with it. Right about there, looks nice. And we are going to just start brushing in our highlights. And this is a great time to really spend time brushing in where you would like your viewer's eye to go. So I want them to spend some time in this foreground. You can see the effect here. If I go before and after, it's starting to make that pop a little bit more. And I don't mind the underside of this fin getting some love. Some of those highlight areas and some of this rock here. And then lastly, I want to go ahead and I want to grab a color from the galactic core here, and we're going to saturate that a touch and then zoom in, and I'm going to brush in just the galactic core. Deselect by hitting Control D. That's before and after. You see the effect it did there. Now I do want to create, I'm going to do a shadow lift layer here. We're going to call this dodge. And the shadow lift, what I want to do is I'm probably going to start with an overlay. I might change that. We're going to go ahead and grab a darks, probably like a 2.5, 2 3/4. And I want to come in here with white and brush in this area right through here a little bit more. We're getting a touch darkened through here, so I'm going to pull out just a little bit more. Cool. So there's that and that. But what I want to do is come in here and hit select sky. Should do a pretty good job selecting now, especially right through here. And I want to come up here with an eraser and erase out what we just did on the sky area. So this is our shadow lift in there. Just gave it a little bit more life, a little bit more detail. Now let's do some burning. I'm going to do another layer, but this time I'm going to do soft light. Grab a darks, probably like 4.5. Yes. Hit select. Control H to hide that. And then I'm going to grab my brush. And I actually want to grab a cooler color. So I'm going to come in like a desaturated blue. And I'm going to go to a 10% opacity on my brush because dodging usually works quicker. And I'm just going to come in and start brushing in some shadow areas, especially right in the middle there, underneath there, so that pops, underneath there, on the edge, underneath that, on that galactic core, especially in the sky. Hit Control D to deselect, and let's see what that did. Boom. Now those three, that's before and that's after. Awesome. Now what we can do is hit Control Alt Shift and E, and we're going to put a little bit of a glowing effect on this. And how we can do that is go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and we're going to blur this until we really just can't make out details. So about 30, close to the megapixel count of my camera. I'm going to hit Control Shift and A to bring up a camera raw filter. And under the basic and camera raw, I'm going to warm it up a touch, maybe a little bit of magenta in there too. So we're warming it up with some of those purple tones. I'm going to bring up the whites, drop the blacks, bring up the highlights, drop the shadows, and add some contrast. Just make it look terrible and some saturation. That looks really bad. Now what we're going to do is double click on here. You can either use lights, luminosity mask. If you guys don't have luminosity masks, you can come to this blend if and go to the underlying layer. We're going to drag this up to about right there where we're starting to pull out the darks. I'm going to click Alt or hold Alt and click on this. And then now, since this is split apart, I can drag this over to the right and this over here. And it really fades that out of the darks area. And then now I can come in here and drop this to about maybe 20 and see what that does for us. Yep, just a little bit of glow. Now I want to go ahead and give an overall vibrance adjustment, boost some color. And I want to make sure that's affecting only color and nothing else. So there's that. So there's a before and after of that. Cool. Now we are almost done. I just want to put a vignette on it. And how I want to do that is with a gradient. I'm going to come to the basics, grab this, probably not any white, just the black. And then I want to make this a diamond, reverse it. Let's actually change this color to black. And then we will scale this up a touch. Perfect, hit OK. I'm gonna change it to a soft light and just feather that in. That looks really nice. This area right here is distracting, so I'm actually going to grab a lasso and we're going to go here and we're going to lasso around that, and I am going to do a content aware fill. And I'm going to hit OK on that. I just feel like it's out of place there. And the last thing I want to do is maybe come up here and clean up this dark edge you guys see right here. And I can do that with the clone stamp. Come here, I'm going to hold Alt, click on that, and just start brushing in the clone stamp of that. Just get rid of that dark edge. That's looking better. Let's see if there's any more of those that are kind of standing out. No, everything else is looking pretty good. Really sweet. Now the only thing that I probably want to do is I'm probably going to add a little bit of haze on the bottom side of this. If I go Control-Alt-Shift-E, and if I hit Control-Shift-A, I'm going to do this inside of the Adobe Camera Raw, which is the same as Lightroom. We're going to come to our masking. We're going to hit Select Sky. We're going to subtract a linear gradient. And from the ground up, we're going to pull this up. And then I'm actually going to invert that. And then coming down here, I'm going to put some negative dehaze. There's that, and that's very subtle, but it just gives it a little bit more of a blend. Doesn't look so harsh. Awesome. And that is, I would say, the final edit. Well, thanks guys for watching this week's editing breakdown. If you enjoyed the video, then please consider giving a thumbs up down below. I know that I may do things differently than how you would do it, but I would love to hear your methods. Let me know down below so we can have a conversation. I got a few more editing breakdown videos that I am working on currently, but if you guys have anything specific you would like to see, then let me know as well in the comment section. But that is all we are going to do today. I will see you guys in the next video.